Good Sunday morning, everyone. Schuyler Callihan here with another episode of Between the Ears. It is the morning after show, and I've got Chris with me. He'll be with me when available this year. Sometimes the kickoffs are going to be late, and we're going to record this pretty bright early in the morning. So depending on how late he's going at it, it may just be me on some of these. But today we got him on board. West Virginia falling 34-12. Go ahead and apologize if my audio sounds a little crackly. I don't have my microphone working, so we'll get that taken care of in the future. But 34-12, Chris. Gene and I pretty much dove deep into this last night, the post-game show. It just never felt like they came ready to play. They didn't feel locked in. They weren't focused. It felt at times that they were a little timid. I don't know what your takeaway from this was. Obviously, you had the 50,000-foot view up there in the press box. Just what did you see up there that maybe some of the other people couldn't see either on TV or in the stadium?
Well, I thought I was actually on the sidelines for the first half, and it was you could just tell immediately that they're a blue blood program. They're bigger, stronger, faster, and I thought that really the difference from last year was they didn't take the fight to Penn State. Um, yes, this group is more talented, but they're just as physical, and I just didn't feel like they were really pressing to make big plays. You saw it in the running game with Jaheim and CJ. They were hesitant in the backfield, trying to look for an opening to make the big play instead of just giving what the defense gave them. Talked about that last year early on, and they had success just by giving what the defense gave them. And if you just continue to work the defense, big plays will happen. They were trying to create big plays, and you saw it. You saw the results. Like they looked hesitant. They looked like they were afraid of them, but that really wasn't the case. So I thought the offensive line, for the most part, held their own. Um, there was going to be maybe a step back for game one. Penn State's got a really good defensive line this year. So I think my biggest takeaway is they just pressed too much. You could see it the way Garrett was throwing. He was trying to be accurate instead of just letting the ball rip. You could see that on the Traylon Davis throw on the goal line. Like he was wide open and he short on it. So you know, so much can be overreacted on week one. This is not. I don't think this at all is an indication on how the season is going to go. They played really, really bad. Um, I think you can probably equate they played that bad against Houston last year, but Houston's not Penn State.
There's a
Um,
little bit of difference there.
so I mean, Penn State caught some breaks. That was probably pretty clear to an offensive pass interference there late in the first
Oh,
half to set up that touchdown.
yeah.
Do you call that? It's 13-6 going to halftime. You're not deflated for a whole half for 2 hours and 19 minutes of a delay. So there was a lot of things that didn't go their way, but I thought Neil Brown put it best. They didn't put themselves in a position. Like they let the officials um to kind of dictate some of those plays. Like Aubrey Burks missed his coverage, period. And not only when he caught up to the play, he didn't get in the right position. You get in front of him on an underthrown ball, it's going to be clear that it'd be offensive pass interference. So they didn't help themselves in a lot of ways, missed some tackles, but I think you have to credit Penn State offensive line. I think they showed that they have some studs up front and they were able to clear the way. And this is a defensive line that's still kind of learning to play together. So kind of thought the defense would struggle early on, considering all the new pieces. I thought offensively it was a huge disappointment, but again, it's not. Uh, it wasn't a good representation of the offense. I just thought they kept tried to make too many big plays, whereas just let the game come to them, let it form naturally, just execute and things will blossom from there. But they just didn't allow it to happen.
Yeah, offensively, it didn't look like the offensive line was clicking at all. And there was times in the Penn State game last year where I wouldn't say they were whipping on Penn State, but they won some of those battles up there against Penn State. I mean, they won rushed for 146 yards up there. They only rushed for what, 2.3 yards a carry yesterday. So they weren't getting a whole lot of one-on-one battles up front. They weren't able to keep Abdul Carter and company kind of out of the game. I mean, obviously he's going to make his plays, but it just felt like those guys were game wreckers constantly. But defensively, that's where most of my issues come with this game because I think you knew kind of coming into this, the offense was going to have a challenge. This is the best defense that West Virginia's going to see all season long. They've got NFL guys all over that thing. Maybe the best defensive player in the country, and we just talked about with Abdul Carter. we knew that there was going to be some struggles there, even with all the talent that comes back. That being said, you've got to have a little bit more of a showing on offense. And Neil talked about it. He said, as much as you have coming back, we shouldn't have looked that bad in week one, even against that defense. There should have been a little bit of a smoother operation. But defensively, I don't know what to take away from it. I don't know if there's an overall concern or if this was just a matter of Penn State just handling things up front, and that was where it all was won at. But to me, the only guy that played well was Josiah Trotter.
Yeah, kind of figured out going in that he would be immediate impact, but yeah, you can say the same thing defensively. They overplayed a lot of plays. You can say they were just overexcited, eager to make a play. Especially when your offense isn't clicking. And it's kind of felt like how it was all day. Like everyone's trying to make a play. And when you're trying to make a play instead of just making the play, just doing what you're supposed to do, you're going to find yourselves out of position a lot. So, yeah, I think really defensively, that's where it starts. You're overplaying, you're not filling your gaps. Defensive line was probably a little bit disappointment. I thought they got pushed around more so than I figured they would. But again, I think you just got to credit Penn. Like they've been successful for decades. Like
Yeah.
they didn't have an NIL transition. Like they kind of had that set up already. Take that for what you will. Like these blue blood programs have these kind of have had these resources, so they haven't had some. They just reload every year. Like go look at the recruiting rankings every year. They bring in the talent. West Virginia's still trying to like Hudson Clement was a walk on, but yeah, he's becoming one of the better receivers on
Malone,
the team.
walk on.
So that's a huge difference when you're going against redshirt juniors and sophomores that were 4-star recruits than your redshirt sophomore or junior that was a walk on. Like this is still a work in progress. But again, they pressed. They didn't take the fight. I'm not taking a lot from this game. There wasn't a lot of positives. I will say this: the kickoff team. That's a much improved unit from last year. That was huge. Like they started them inside the 25 a lot. So big shout out to Jeff Kuntz and that staff for fixing that whole unit from last year because it was atrocious last year. So that was really the only positive I could take away from this game. Sounds bad, but I didn't like. I don't know. Like Penn State's going to get better as the season goes along. I don't think they did anything spectacular. Kind of expected them to make some plays, but I just thought West Virginia overall just tried to make too many plays. And when you're the under talented team, you have to be disciplined
Yeah,
everywhere. You cannot miss assignments. You're not going to catch up to them. You're not going to be able to take a chance and you don't have the talent that they do to like make up for it. Like you don't have the speed, you don't have that athleticism as they do, kind of make up for those plays. So it's not really a go back to the drawing board. Just go back to doing what you do. Just play within yourselves. This is probably the most talented and the best team that they're going to play all year. If they win out, the next one might be Utah. Is probably the best one that you could kind of look towards would be like, well, hopefully they learned their lesson from Penn State because it could end up being kind of the same result. So no one's going to be as big and as fast as Penn State, like at all. You're not going to go up against an offensive coordinator like that, like as good as that guy is. Like he's great schematically, great play caller, understands the mismatches. You're not going to get a lot of that. You're not going to have the same mismatches throughout the season. So bad performance, but again, I don't think this is an indication of what's to come the rest of the season.
I wouldn't think so. I was a little confused of what the game plan really was on offense, and maybe it's just because they really never had a chance to get into a rhythm, so it's kind of hard to see what the vision was for that. But I think there is some concerns there. The receivers didn't win a whole lot of battles out there. Obviously, again, they're playing against some tough corners, what the Penn State has, but that's been a talking point for us. And people were getting it or calling us out, a couple of weeks ago. We were giving the receivers a little harsh criticism, but this is exactly what we're talking about. Next week it's going to look great when you're playing
Too
Albany and
many drop balls, man.
yeah,
Like in
drop
games like
balls,
that,
Preston
there's
Fox,
going to be
Traylon
tough
Ray.
catches you have to make, and they all can't be right in a breadbasket. Like you have to make plays, and that was my biggest criticism of this unit since Neil Brown has been here. They haven't had guys make plays,
Yeah, and
and they
that's
had opportunities against Penn State, and they didn't right off the bat. Traylon Ray, like win that battle. Period. Like I know the guy's on you. Ball hits your hands, you have to bring it in. Jaden
yeah,
Bray over the middle, tough catch. got to make it.
I
Preston
think every
Fox,
one of them.
pass behind him a little bit, got to make it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I understand the pass isn't there where you want it to be, but if you want to win games, you got to catch these passes. Your quarterback's not going to be on point every single time. And Garrett Green was not accurate at all.
I'm pretty
But
sure
at some point, you have to make catches.
Preston Fox, I think, had one. Traylon Ray had one. Hudson Clement had one, I think, along the sideline. Um, Felt like there was one.
Jaden Bray had one over the
Hayden
middle.
Ray. Did Cole Taylor dropped one too?
Yeah, when he got hit.
Yes.
Again, understandable you get hit, but I mean, if you want to be at the next level, you want to be in the NFL, man, you got to bring those balls down.
And the one thing I think too is this just shows you how far you really are from being a team like Penn State or being a team that's nationally relevant again. Now, sure, you can go and win 10 games still this year. You could win 9 games or whatever and still have a chance to get to the college football playoff. In the grand scheme of things, this game doesn't really even matter. This was just a kind of a get you ready for the Big 12 kind of thing. That's how I kind of view the non-conference slate anymore because who cares about it really? If you can get there in an at-large situation, great. But you feel like West Virginia's best chance, regardless, is they're going to have to win the Big 12. There's going to be very many. There's going to be way too many teams in the SEC and the Big Ten to get these at-large bids. They're going to eat them up. It's going to be really hard for West Virginia to get an at-large bid unless they go 11-1 with an unreal win in non-conference play. So, getting them ready for Big 12 play is the number one thing. I think this does that, but you've got to bounce back these next 2 games. You cannot go into Big 12 play not being 2-1. And I say that saying that the non-conference really doesn't matter, but you have to show some marks of progress in these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and they will. Like, this is why they're changing the schedule. Like, you flip Albany and Penn State, it probably looks different. You know what I mean? You get that first game jitters, you get that first, Labor Day crowd out of the way, and then you get the same crowd. Like, yes, this group should be used to it, but at the same time, it's only a second year
Yep.
together. Like, they're still building up.
Still young.
Like, yeah, this is unfortunately frustrating because you obviously want that big signature win, but we talked about earlier, like they're not there yet. Like this just isn't, probably was generous that they were only a field goal difference in the preview. Because I thought they'd execute a lot better offensively than they did. Knew the defense. I knew they would give up points, but I think the disappointment was the offense, but I don't think that's the offense we're going to see. There'll be some good defenses, but not to that level. And I think with Penn State's improvement as season, you play them in a couple of weeks, it's a different game.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Not saying West Virginia may win, but it's a totally different game. So I'm glad they're getting rid of these games. They're not a program that can do this. They're not reloading every year, so they need to get rid of them. Keep that pit in the third game of the year, and just kind of move on from these ridiculous openers. They got to do this with Alabama coming up, so it's not going to get easier anytime soon. So the overcompensation for what the committee wanted for a tougher non-conference schedules, no one else did it. West Virginia jumped on it, and we're just been paying for it for years now, and yep, they are opportunities to get a signature win earlier in the season, but right now they're completely unnecessary because you can lose 2 games. You can
I
have
don't
a
know how many
cupcake
of these they've
schedule in a
won.
non-conference and lose 2 Big 12 games and probably still get an at-large bid because you don't have this on tape against the top team. So yeah, that may hurt you, but you can still lose 1 game regular season, probably Big 12 championship, and have a chance at an at-large bid in the Big 12. Still being in the Big 12. Really not concerned. Just take care of business the rest of the way. Frustrating day. Not a lot of positive takeaway from it, but we'll see in a couple weeks against Pitt. Pitt had, I guess, a good showing against Kent State. Kent State's probably not very good. Kind of see what they do going forward. Not still. I still think they really pound Pitt. Still don't think that's a game.
The one thing that I do have to say is because I saw a few people, saw a couple of Penn State fans trolling in the comment section and the post game show and in our preview section as well, the preview show. about how we were all delusional, thinking West Virginia was going to keep this a game or even have a chance to win. I'll make this very clear. Me and Chris, at least, maybe not Eugene because he's just super biased, but or me and Chris, we both picked Penn State to win this game, and we have said for a long time, probably really no chance that West Virginia wins this game. However, we both thought that going into it, they should be more competitive. That was the only thing that I think you and I were looking for in this game was just for them to show up, be more competitive than they were in Happy Valley a year ago, because you're a little older offensively. You bring everybody back there. You feel like you have some more experience on defense. That's going to take some time to mesh, and you got 60,000 behind you, not 100,000 going against you. That's kind of the whole thought process going into it. I never really looked at it and said, yeah, they're going to have a chance to win. It was more of, hey, keep it close, get it to the fourth quarter, make it a one-score game late, and who knows what can happen. Crazier stuff has happened in college football already this year, and it's going to continue to happen. Who knows what happens if you make it a one-score game in the fourth quarter? But Penn State fans, go worry about beating Michigan. Go worry about beating Penn State. Yes, I saw a lot of West Virginia fans were talking trash on Twitter and stuff. Don't worry about them. Like West Virginia fans, this is what they do. They're going to go out and talk their trash. That's just how they operate. But that's okay. They're
They
hard.
have right to talk trash for a lot of
Yes,
reasons. They beat everybody in the Big Ten, but the top teams
but the
in the
top
Big
teams.
Ten. But they're still considered one of the top teams because they beat everybody else, and they're
Right.
competitive against those teams. So it is what it is. Like it just goes back to they've been successful for decades. West Virginia's always had to play catch up, always had to find guys that were under the radar and make them stars. They're going to have to continue to do that. They're bringing in better recruits, but it's not something. This is West Virginia isn't a place that can be built overnight. Like a
Oh,
successful program cannot be built overnight here. You can go get someone to take over Alabama and be immediately successful. Their operation brings in a lot more money than West Virginia. Money runs college football. You need money for a lot of different reasons. They give you a lot of the different um, facilities that they can offer, better NIL, go down the list. We've heard Kirby Smart talk about how the NIL and transfer portals hurting them. They go and thump Clemson. Now, if you want to get a reality on what's going on in college football, look what happened to Clemson. Sweeney refuses to use the portal, and look what's happening in that program. West Virginia is adapting. It's just going to take a while for them to catch up.
it is.
So I'm just like let's revisit this in about 4 years if they can continue to bring in talent, continue to develop the talent. But yeah, it takes way too long to build a football program. It's not a switch that you can just hit and you hit it on the head. Like we came into this game like yeah, they had a chance to beat Penn State, but it was going to be one of those games where it was like you had
Easy
to do
stuff to happen.
everything right. Like you had to make plays and they just did.
I
And
mean,
that's just the
they fumbled the
reality.
ball, and then you fumble right back on the very next play.
Right. Like
Those
you
things
get
can't happen.
opportunity early and then you get so anxious because you want to get the play going, you snap it early. And that was on Green. Like he asked for the ball too early. He admitted it. I mean, that's the kind of things that you can't happen. And that's a second year starting quarterback going up, being a little bit more unleashed because they weren't going to be conservative this game. So there was more anxiety into it. And that's just a learning lesson for him. Bigger games down the line, he'll learn from it. Be patient, let the play run, and do what you're supposed to do, and good things will happen.
Yeah. So, like you said, there's not a whole lot of positives to take away from this one.
Kickoff,
Penn State,
man. Kickoff was big. That was a
yeah,
big. I think because really, if you can continue to keep your opponents inside the 25 at this point, where they're either going to force them to have to take touchback, it takes out weapons. That's a big weapon for a lot of teams in the Big 12. Think of all the great returns. Think about all the things that's happened to West Virginia where a team got right back into it because they started at midfield with a nice kickoff return. So if they can keep that momentum, give their make sure that defense has a long field to work with, and it bodes well for the rest of the season.
it sure does. 34-12, the final score for West Virginia in week one against Penn State. And yeah, I mean, hopefully they just take this next week to bounce back and recoup. Again, hats off to Penn State. I'm not gonna take anything away from them. They're a good football team. They're gonna make some noise. Probably be a college football playoff team. Don't know what they'll do against the rest of the top teams in the Big Ten, but again, that was the number one thing coming into it. Just be competitive. That's not what West Virginia was on Saturday. That's, I think, why so many people are upset, is that you just weren't competitive at all. And that's really the only reason, my only complaint. It's not that they didn't win a game against the top 10 team. You just didn't look competitive. You didn't look like you were ready to show up and play. So maybe that changes here in a couple of weeks when they go up to Pitt for the backyard brawl. But that's going to do it for us here today on the morning after on Between the Ears. I'm Schuyler Callihan. That's Christopher Hall. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI. Give us a follow on X at SI_WVU. And we'll be back Tuesday for the next episode, kicking off Albany week as the Mountaineers get ready to host the Great Danes before heading up to the backyard brawl to take on Pitt. So we'll see you guys here on Tuesday. Take care.